This is Ricky Gelb. People that know me know that I do meditation. I teach meditation and I work in spirituality to help people with addictions, anxiety, depression, different sorts of mental illness. A lot of times it's just a total sum of the life experience that adds up to a point where they're stuck and they don't know their true nature. They don't know how to just be, even though they're a being. They're stuck in attachments, conditioning. And so I've turned to science, to scientists, to help with the content, to prove to people that the universe loves them, cares for them, and is always looking out for them from the time they start as one cell and they turn into 60 trillion cells into a whole human being. And today I have the great pleasure of having Dr. Bruce Damer. Bruce had one of the greatest discoveries of the year last year in science. He discovered that the origin of life started on land, not in sea. And he also has some of the greatest ideas for NASA that perhaps may save humanity one day. Bruce is a brilliant, brilliant man. He's also a very kind man and a very spiritual man, and I'm honored to be his friend and that he took the time to do this. And my first question to Bruce in our first non-duality, contemplation, and meditations is, what is consciousness? We've heard 800 scientists this week at the Science of Consciousness conference ask that question. Bruce, what is consciousness for you?
Understanding how people boot up. So like all this new insight into addiction, these brain scan studies, energy work that is able to help people roll through a deeply held trauma that's not even verbal, and then release their systems. And there's the medicines, and there's the energy medicines, and there's better diets and everything. So even the Western person who comes from a culture that's very disconnected from nature and their bodies are coming back into their bodies and into health. And it's happening everywhere. And it's a beautiful trend. New tools are emerging every day, practically. New practices.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're healing from the bottom up, and people can do it for themselves and community. Community makes it happen.
And does that have to do with consciousness evolving collectively? Or?
It's driving consciousness. So only through healing, because mental can only get you so far. Consciousness is in the body. That's one of the issues with the speakers that we just saw. They don't have embodied experience of consciousness. So they're in a mental state, but they're even separate from a mental state. They're in an abstract state. So when you hear them talk about it, there's no connection. So consciousness is a full body thing, which involves nature. It involves the whole grid. I mean, the whole etheric field, or you could call it, the totality, right? There's nothing. So consciousness can't be sort of dissected out and put into a slide and have bullet points.
But you're not just talking about subjective consciousness is just in the subjective person.
The embodied moment by moment,
okay.
Be here now experience of it is the only way to address it.
The experience.
The experience in the now. And if you withdraw from it and then describe it from a great distance and abstract it into bullet points or books, then you're now separate.
So Bruce, I'm really glad you brought this up. Whenever I teach a meditation class, I always ask the class, I say, everybody knows we should be in the moment. Everybody knows we should be in the now. But what is it that we're trying to be in the moment from? Everybody's baffled. Very rarely does anybody have an answer. And what we're trying to be in the moment from is our thinking. It's on the future, the past, to this, to that, the bank account, the relationship. Shut up, just be in the moment. You could write across your wall, be in the moment, to remind you every morning. But how are you going to use the mind that's all over the place, that we're trying to be in the moment from, to fix itself? Obviously, that's not possible. And that's why I'm so into meditation, because we could experience our way by slowing down our hearts, slowing down our blood pressure, creating all kinds of healing hormones, the healing ways you were just talking about, Bruce. And then we're in the moment. It's like time slows down, our body profoundly relaxes, and we have an automatic shift in consciousness. We see the world and ourselves different. It's funny, because the hardest thing for a being to be is to just be. So I agree totally with you that the biggest problem on earth is separation, especially separation from self and true self, when we're stuck in all the false programming, the false constitution we develop as a child, what they call conditioning and attachment, basically the total sum of your life experience, where it's bringing you to think at this moment. If it has you stuck in a place where you have a lot of anxiety or an addiction, you're not really seeing the true picture. You're stuck in self. The truth is, we can never be separated from what we are of. It's like a fish looking for water. We're always looking for something in the sky, something in the book, instead of looking within. Think about the fact that we start as one cell, and we turn into 60 trillion cells automatically. Something has the power and the creativity and the love and the care to keep doubling and doubling and doubling that one cell you start as, 1/1000th of an inch, into 60 trillion cells, which is all your organs, the me and you sitting here right now, the phenomenon. And at some point, the mystery of creation actually put your specific personality into that phenomenon of a body. That's great love and care, and that's also direct contact with the source. I try to encourage people to say prayers of gratitude throughout the day. Like, look at your hands. How many things can you do with your hands? You can't even write a gratitude list for your hands. It's infinite. You could do so many things. But how often do we look at our hands and go, wow, what an incredible creation, what an incredible gift and tool I've been given for this experience of life, that I'm being cared for. And how often do we say thank you? Even just in our minds, do we say thank you? So I encourage people to say prayers of gratitude throughout the day for your feet. They give you freedom and movement when you wake up. Or that thing that started you as one cell and turned you into 60 trillion cells never stops working for you. So we're never really alone. We just think we have to be in control. And basically we start to play God, and we create our own calamity. We set ourselves up for collisions all the time with people, places, and things. You know what I practice? Maybe from meditating for so many years, I have some awareness, but usually if I have a problem with something, it's because I think some person, place, or thing should be different. Something different than I was programmed to believe. An attachment is a belief and an ideal. So I know that usually when I have a problem, it's because of my own thinking. And instead of thinking about what should be different out there, I think about what should be different within, which is usually having acceptance. And what I do is, I know and count that every day more is revealed. It's that same energy that turned me from one cell into 60 trillion that's still working for me, working for all of us. The water around the fish you can't see. And what I do is I practice taking my will out of the equation when I realize my thinking is creating a problem. I just take my will out of the equation and just be in the moment, usually meditate. So it's easy. And always the universe puts something in front of me way greater than I could have conjured on my own power. Something with much more meaning and purpose. And proof that I'm not alone. Because if I'm working with that energy, now I'm co-creating. That's real co-creating and oneness with the universal force energy that created you. So Bruce, I'm always trying to show people how they can't be alone. They can't be separate. It's just in our minds, and it's usually out of fear and what we're taught by school, like you said, survival of the fittest, use more will, try harder. Instead of just be still and know, like every ancient wisdom tells us. But my point is, I try to show people how cared for and loved they are by the universe, by the Creator, what I call the mystery. Some people call it God, higher power, whatever you want. Give me an example of how cared for we are by the universe, if you don't mind.
Is it good? So we're sitting under this acacia tree, and the sun was beating down on us. So as we walked here, we sought shade, but because the sun is powerful, it's a force that brought our world into being. So the planet turns sunward, and the sun comes up, and it powers the living world, and it basks in this thing. And we're about to go to lunch, and we're going to eat the products of that gift, of that 24-hour gift. There'll be salads, but there'll also be like steaks, which is something that ate the plants that also received the gift. And that's how life began, was this gift of cycles and sun, the primary cycle being the rotation of our Earth, reliably doing it for 4 billion years or more, with a beautiful little stable sun, circular orbits, protected by Jupiter from impacts from asteroids, because Jupiter pulled the asteroid belt out past Mars to keep us from being in a freaking shooting gallery, right? Cleared the inner solar system. And then we had this moon, this huge moon. It was created by an impact with Earth, and it's been a sentinel protecting us. So you can see the craters at night, that those were impacts were headed for here, right? It took the hits for us. And you think about all this beauty and wonder of the living world taking the hit for us and also cleaning the planet. So 4 billion years ago, it was a toxic waste dump here. It was pink skies and acid rain and no oxygen, and because we can see this in the rocks that survive from then. Tsunamis, impact zones, volcanism, a mess, a cooling mantle. And these little fragile progenote communities that began life, managing to stay ahead of being destroyed all the time, sharing innovations, because it was a sharing system, and gradually lifting what's called the microbial mat, which is like slime molds. You know, people look at slime and everything. When you look at slime, like in a pond, you think it's very primordial, and it is. And then those guys got green, and they were able to capture sunlight.
Is this the soup they refer to?
Beyond the soup. So this is after you've got life itself. And everything is connected. So the top green level of the slime absorbs the light to feed the lower levels. You know, and that's how this was done. So we actually are now discovering that we can't use the term survival of the fittest anymore, which is what's isolated people from other people. It's like, it sucks, right? So if you're alone on the street like you were at points in your life, you feel completely isolated from society. It totally sucks. And so that leads people to look for any kind of comfort. So addiction, according to our friend Gabor Mate, is made by people being isolated and cut off from other people. And so what science is going to teach us in the 21st century is a role. It's a philosophical role that we're never disconnected. We were always a collaborative, sharing community. And that's how life actually operates, and that's how it started. It had to be a community. So there was never a common ancestor. There was never an individual. At the origin of life, it was always a community unit. So the community unit evolved. It wasn't individuals competing against each other, because they couldn't. They didn't have the tech to do that. They only had the technology to collaborate and just barely survive. And the grass that we're sitting on right here and this tree next to us are collaborating. So even though this is a golf course and sort of artificial, this grass is collecting water and making soils and protecting evaporation, so this tree is actually growing better because the soils are retaining water. We just happen to make a golf course out of it. And this tree is feeding thousands of organisms. And when it dies and falls apart, it actually becomes the big payoff. The tree is rotting and things are living in it for years. And so even in death, there's giving back. So we're learning a whole new way to look at our world, which then translates to our civilization, because we have to make changes, right? We can't have people living in isolation. This is why we have crazy politics, crazy religion, because people feel in fear because they feel cut off. This is why we have addiction. That's why we have, consumerism isolates people from others. It makes them feel unworthy, the whole thing.
You're a woman of tenderness. I love the way you give. I'm far from perfect. Today has a beautiful light. Broke my heart, it broke it twice. Broke my heart, it broke it twice. I came to believe in you and all that you do, the good and the bad, happy, the sad. Didn't know what I had. Sweet something, don't you know? I give you love to help you grow. Give you love to help you grow. Natalia, Danny, and me, we sat under those big wood trees, gave up everything to be free. I came to believe in you and all that you do, the good and the bad, happy, the sad. I love what I have. Sweet something, does she know? Give her love to help her grow. Give her love and help her grow. Took a drive in the rain. Hope you're there when I awake. Hope you're there when I awake. So, so you said we come from light, or the sun, or life does.
Mm.
And then you described a whole system that has been created, that like the tree and the grass or food comes from, that feeds us. You know, we get oxygen from plants. There's the whole system.
Yeah.
But why? Why?
Why is it happening?
Because we live in a life, truly, for me, I keep thinking through to the end, and the bottom line is we really are clueless. We have no idea where the Big Bang came from. You know, if there is a God, where did it come from? How does something come from nothing is beyond the comprehension, isn't it, of humans, kind of?
It kind of is.
And where, though?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. So we don't really know any of that. But yet at the same time, why do we get personalities in this biological thing of life? That's what makes me think there is something that
like
the personality, you know, that's a human being that suffers, and that there is some meaning then afterwards, maybe, and a reason for this. But I'm just curious. Go where you want.
As you were talking, I was thinking, we actually can't ask why, but we can be grateful. That's the actual correct response to, like, well, a Big Bang happened and maybe a God appeared and life appeared and whatever, and we can't ask really why, because our little monkey brains are too small to absorb the totality, but we can be grateful. And that's another way of engaging it, gratitude, because then you can kind of relax. Because one's an unclimbable mountain, the other one is just enjoy the view.
That's how I live my life, is meditation with relaxation and gratitude.